This video is sponsored by Best Buy.
2.5 years ago, Apple switched to using their own processors in their Mac. And since then, I've used or owned almost all of them at some point. Some I really enjoyed using, and others, if I knew better, I might have bought a different device instead. So here's my own thoughts and experiences with the Macs and upgrades that I'm reconsidering and if it's worth it for your own needs. Let's find out with a little Mac lineup review. For this video, I'm only going to focus on the Macs and all the different upgrades that I personally think that you should know more about before purchasing and the different alternatives for that particular purchase. I'm not saying that the Macs and upgrades I'm talking about are bad, but they may not be the best value Mac that you can buy for the price when you consider all the other Macs that Apple sells. Okay, so let's start with laptops. Apple sells 3 different Pro MacBook Pros. I have 2 of them right here. And these 2 are the only ones that are really Pro machines. These Pro machines come in 2 different sizes, the 14-inch MacBook Pro and the 16-inch MacBook Pro. The smallest sibling, the 13-inch MacBook Pro, which I don't have right here, it's more of an M2 MacBook Air in disguise with an old aging body. It's bigger and bulkier with more battery life, but it also uses the Touch Bar, which Apple actually no longer sells on any other laptop. That's a feature that they're slowly phasing out of their lineup. And the 13-inch MacBook Pro also lacks MagSafe, the magnetic charging cable that easily snaps off of your laptop if the cable gets snagged, preventing your laptop from being yanked off the table and onto the cold, hard floor. Meaning you only have 2 usable ports on this 13-inch MacBook Pro for charging and peripherals. It's not a bad laptop by any means. It's just specced so close to the M2 MacBook Air and costs more than that MacBook that I don't think losing the MagSafe port and actual function keys is worth a bulkier machine, especially if this is being phased out. It has more battery life, but the M2 Air already comfortably lasts a day anyway. So if you're someone who charges your laptop at night, it doesn't make much of a difference. If your budget is only around the price of this 13-inch MacBook Pro, I'd opt for the M2 Air or the 15-inch M2 MacBook Air. MagSafe is a game changer on those laptops, protecting your laptop and freeing up another port for all of your different peripherals. And if you really wanted a Pro machine, you really should spend the extra money for the 14-inch or 16-inch MacBook Pros. Those provide a lot of fantastic features in them that you won't get from the lower tier Apple laptops. And right now, if you're lucky, I think you can still find the last generation one on clearance. They're really nice machines. The 13-inch MacBook Pro really is the black sheep of Apple's laptop lineup and a really funky value too. If you're watching this video and learning from my purchasing mistakes, you're probably looking at purchasing a new Mac. And if that's the case, today's sponsor, Best Buy, can help. Best Buy's Upgrade Plus program is an alternative way for you to save money while buying a new Mac by allowing you to split the purchase price of a new Mac across 36 months. After those 36 months, you can choose to keep the Mac by paying the remaining amount on the 37th month or trade it in towards an upgrade for a new Mac on the Upgrade Plus plan. Or you can just turn in your Mac without paying that final 37th payment. It's super easy to start. Using Best Buy's website, click on the Mac product page that you're looking at and select Upgrade Plus. Your monthly payment is then outlined and varies based on your credit score. But if you have great credit, you may qualify for 0% APR, meaning all 37 monthly payments will equal the entire purchase price of the original device. Obviously, everyone's financial situation is different, and the last thing you want to do is add on to your monetary stress if that's a hassle you can't take on. But if you're in a good financial situation and don't want to quickly spend so much money on a Mac, the Upgrade Plus program can help by spreading those payments into small, easy to manage 37 monthly payments. So if you'd like to try the Upgrade Plus program by Best Buy, check out the link in the video description below. And thank you Best Buy for sponsoring this video. Now, back to the video. Something to notice about Apple's laptops is they actually sell 2 screen sizes of their most popular laptops. There's the 16-inch MacBook Pro and the 15-inch MacBook Air that just came out. These laptops are actually really similar to their smaller counterparts, except for a few key differences. These bigger boys have higher price tags, larger batteries, way more, have larger screens, and have the slightly faster versions of their specific chips. I use a 16-inch MacBook Pro at my job. Depending on what you use your laptop for, the extra cost might not be worth it. I'm just going to talk about the 16-inch Pro right now, but a lot of the same applies to the 15-inch Air too. The larger laptop makes it heavier to carry around with you, adding additional weight in your bag. And while the extra battery life is nice to have, both smaller siblings last longer than a day already. So as long as you charge every day, it's not a major benefit. That being said, if you primarily use your laptop on the go in environments where you don't have access to external monitors, the larger display comes in handy. It's so much easier to multitask on the larger displays, so I actually prefer using the larger screens on the couch, at coffee shops, airports, whatever. I guess in this instance, size kind of does matter, and 2 inches does add a lot of value. So the trade-off here, and the question you should be asking yourself, is it worth lugging around the larger laptop and paying the premium for that? I almost always have a desk to use, so I'd personally say no, but you might feel different there. You really have to be multitasking on the go frequently to see the most benefits come out of the larger screen sizes. So that's it for laptops, but what about desktops? Here's where things get a bit more complex. The next device I want to talk about is the iMac. How I like to think about the iMac is that it's really a Mac Mini with a really pretty glossy 4K display up front. It's a really nice looking computer. We can all agree there. I really like how it looks. It has built-in speakers that are pretty good and a webcam that's okay. And because all the components are built right into the machine, it's cleaner, it takes up less space, and it's easier to use. My wife's office space is pink, and so we have a pink iMac. It fits perfectly in there. And with its all-in-one design, it's relatively clutter-free. The purpose of this machine is to be something pretty to look at, fit into the environment, and be a compact, clutter-free computer all in one. The problem with that is when everything is rolled into one, it leads to some compromises. If you move homes or change the room it sits in, that pink or orange iMac might not fit in that dark or moody vibe you're going for in a different room. And unlike the Mac Mini, where if you need a new computer, you can just replace the little box and pay $600 or so for a new Mac Mini, plug it into your monitor and peripherals, and you're good to go. If you want to upgrade from the iMac, you're stuck buying a whole new set of computer accessories because the brains, screen, speakers, and webcam are all built into this one device. And this wouldn't be a problem if Apple allowed you to use the display and speakers separately from this iMac, but they don't. You can't use this as a standalone display. Take this old Samsung all-in-one, for example. The computer inside isn't great anymore, but it has an HDMI port that lets me connect to the screen and use it as a monitor and speakers instead of a computer. This iMac? Nope. Once the computer is no good, the screen, webcam, and speakers are no longer usable. And if you really want the true iMac experience or access to some additional color options, you need to pay an additional $200 above the starting price. But on the other hand, the iMac is dead simple to get up and running and use. You don't have to worry about having the right HDMI or DisplayPort cable to plug into a monitor. You don't have to set up a webcam, and you don't have to worry about fiddling with knobs on your speakers, messing with your monitor settings. All you have to worry about are right there, right in front of you. For all your non-techie friends, getting all that extra stuff set up isn't the easiest thing to do. So for very basic users, this might still be a good fit. I absolutely love the 24-inch M1 iMac, but I don't think it's a default Mac that someone should look at, especially when it comes to Apple's desktops. You should get this iMac if it's necessary for your computer to look good. It's necessary for it to be easy to set up and use, or if you're space limited on your desk space, that an all-in-one like this makes sense. I also think it's a great fit for businesses with someone at the front desk where space might be limited and you're trying to give off a premium, modern, clutter-free vibe. But that's a very, very specific use case. It's kind of like the Samsung Frame TV. It looks great in a house, but as a TV, you can find better value elsewhere. But what this iMac and that Samsung Frame TV have in common is that it does get a nice spousal approval factor. But obviously how a computer looks isn't necessarily what's important in a computer. So instead, for most people, I'd recommend an M2 Mac Mini, a nice 4K IPS monitor, some decent speakers, and a good webcam. You'd probably still have spent around the same amount of money on that Mac Mini setup, and it does require a bit more work to set up and get everything running and managing all those cables, but you could end up with something nice pretty quickly. Here's the desk setup I did with a Mac Studio, which is similar to a Mac Mini, just a bit bulkier with different internals. But you get the idea. It just takes a bit of extra time and requires a little bit more room to get something nice and hide all those cables away. Then in 5 years or so, when you want to replace your Mac Mini, you can just replace the Mac instead of paying for all the different peripherals and pricey display again. So that's definitely the more economical and versatile path. Speaking of Mac Studio, let's talk about the Mac Studio. Besides the expandability that the Mac Pro gives you, it has basically everything you'd want in a Mac. It has ports in the front, a ton of ports on the back, 10 gigabit Ethernet, and it's dead quiet 99% of the time during use. I absolutely love the Mac Studio, and it's currently my daily driver machine for editing all of my different YouTube videos. This is just the base model M1 Max version, but that's the issue. It might be too powerful for me. Is that weird to say? A lot of people like to future-proof their computer purchase. The justification is that you buy a machine that's way more powerful than what you need, and that lets you use the computer for a long time and not have to upgrade. Computers are expensive. Why not go for the best? But I think that's not the best way to look at it. The Mac Studio, at least for most users, is the embodiment of that philosophy. Then some people kind of follow the opposite philosophy, where you just buy the device that suits your needs right now while ignoring what you might need in the future, which, in my opinion, isn't the greatest way to look at it either. Computers are often used for many years before they're replaced. Computers slow down over time because software and application updates get more feature-rich and bloated, so the software gets harder to run, so your computer seems like it's slowing down, but the poor guy is just trying his best, working on more things at once during any given time, and you don't actually see all the extra stuff it has to handle. Poor little guy. So my personal philosophy for future-proofing is to just take how I'm currently using my device right now and add a little bit of buffer. Buy the slightly more performant one so that you can account for that eventual slowdown of your machine. That's how I approach this Mac Studio. The Mac Studio has two variants, the Max variant and the Ultra variant. And that Ultra variant was just way too much power for my own needs and also costs close to $4,000. The M1 Max was already faster than basically any other Mac that I've used, so it seemed like the most logical choice. But the Mac Studio with the Max and Ultra chips are really for power users or businesses who need higher end performance out of their machine, not the average person. It's completely overkill there. I'm serious, if all you're doing is web browsing, productivity tasks, schoolwork, learning to code, and some light to medium intensity video and photo editing, get the M2 Pro Mac Mini. That's more than enough to serve your needs and costs a whole lot less too. This machine is for that 5% of people needing the performance to get some work done. The last thing I want to make sure people are aware of is upgrade costs. When looking at Macs, the base model price always gets you thinking, wow, the performance you get for the price is pretty good. But where Apple makes an absolute killing is the cost of upgrades. I mean, look how much it costs to go from 256 gigabytes of storage to 512 gigabytes of storage on the Mac Mini. $200 USD. If all you're doing is storing some nostalgic videos, music, photos, and documents you said you were going to look at but never do, you might want to consider purchasing an external SSD instead, like the Samsung T7 that costs less than that tiny upgrade, but this is 2 terabytes. This is 4 times bigger than that 512 gigabyte upgrade you would have paid for. I think in the past, a ton of people have been burned by backing up their stuff on slow external hard drives, which would take forever. But external SSDs, when compared to those old spinning hard drives, are so much faster, smaller, and travel friendly. Is it as fast as the SSD storage built directly into the Mac that you plan to buy? No, it's not. But it's plenty fast already. Before I moved to storing all of my stuff on a NAS, I would edit all of my YouTube videos and store all of those projects on external SSDs. That means I would edit all of my video projects and store all of my footage on external SSDs, and they handled the jobs perfectly, as if they were part of the machine. I never noticed a speed difference, and for most people, I'd argue that you wouldn't either, unless you're constantly moving giant multi-gigabyte files around. Adding an external SSD does make things a bit more cluttered, and it can be annoying having to keep this drive around for a laptop. But some people are geniuses who just Velcro the drive onto the back of their laptops when they use it. If you're using a desktop Mac, it's relatively convenient because you just plug it in through the back and never touch it again. If you're on a budget, this could save you some serious cash. And in a few years, when you decide to upgrade your Mac, you can still reuse the external SSD and all of your files will be intact on that drive. That definitely beats throwing out an expensive laptop with storage built in that can't be reused anymore. I think it's worth the hassle of having an external drive outside your laptop. Okay, so that was a lot of information. And again, I'm not saying that the Macs I talked about or the different upgrades I talked about in this video are bad, but for the price you're paying for them, they can be a bad value for your dollar. And from my own experiences, I learned that you have to look a little bit into the future to really figure out what you need instead of what you want in the moment. This isn't a where do you see yourself in 5 years type of interview question for some job. But if I had a better understanding of what I needed or how I might use it in the future, I think the Macs that I ended up buying would have been a little different than what I have in my home now. For example, how would I have predicted that my wife would outgrow the iMac? I thought she was that type of user. How you use your devices do change, and it's good to keep some of that in mind when you decide to purchase a computer, Windows, or Mac. Anyway, I hope this was at least useful for you to avoid some of the mistakes that I made. Anyway, what do you personally think? What Mac were you thinking about buying? Did the things that I bring up change your opinions in any way? What Mac are you getting now? Or are you not getting a Mac at all? Leave all in the comment section below. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. And if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, and well, don't forget to subscribe. I'll see y'all next time. Bye.